Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a plunge into some really specific, kind of absurd circumstances that can just completely redefine a person's reality. We're looking at what happens when these deeply held, highly guarded secrets, one's a physical discovery, the other a technological accident, when they just suddenly blow up the lives of the people involved.
Yeah, it's really an examination of cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. And I think our mission today is to take these two very distinct, very bizarre scenarios and see if we can pull out the universal emotional truths that are sort of hiding inside them.
Exactly. Like, how do families and just individuals cope when their biggest secret isn't something shameful necessarily, but something that forces them to just rethink their entire concept of, talent, merit.
And even the future itself in the second story.
Right. And the source material for this really rich and, let's be honest, uncomfortable insight comes from Nick Hornby's 2009 collection.
Yeah.
Not a Star and Otherwise Pandemonium.
And we're going to be looking at the two narratives in that collection. The first is Not a Star, which is this incredible tale of suburban discovery and family dynamics.
And then we'll get to Otherwise Pandemonium, which is a much darker kind of coming-of-age story, but it's set against, well, an impending apocalypse.
So let's start with Not a Star. It introduces us to Lynn, Dave, and their son, Mark, who's 23. And Hornby, he just throws you right into the deep end.
Oh, he really does. The whole thing kicks off because of the most, common but also most reliable way information gets around, the local gossip.
Of course.
The catalyst here is a neighbor, Karen Glenister, who is just beautifully described as the Clapham Junction of gossip.
I love that phrase.
It's perfect, right? She's a nurse, she knows everything about everyone, and she makes sure that information keeps flowing.
And the information she delivers in this case is dropped anonymously through Lynn's letterbox. It's a videotape in a plain envelope.
And the title is Meet the Fuckers.
So Lynn's reaction is it's completely visceral. The text describes her knees shaking so badly she can barely even stand up. She's struggling for breath.
And that's before she even fully processes what she's seeing. The initial shock isn't just the title, it's the cover art.
Right, it's the visual. That's what really shatters her composure.
Because it's her son, Mark. He's front and center, standing kind of awkwardly behind a woman with, let's just say, enormous breasts, and his hands are covering her nipples.
And Lynn has this brief, what she calls glorious moment, where she still has the luxury of imagining that my son didn't really do very much.
Yeah, maybe he's just in the background, or, he's the polite gentleman in the scene or something.
But that thought just doesn't last, does it? It's immediately obliterated by this massive wave of cognitive dissonance.
She just can't square the man on this pornographic film cover with the image she has in her head of Mark struggling through his academic life.
Yeah, the boy who would literally chew through his biro, his pen, at night, just trying to finish his English homework.
She even does this quick kind of prejudiced internal check, Could you be brilliant at English and also star in a film called Meet the Fuckers?
And her conclusion is probably not.
Probably not. So the immediate painful realization is that Mark wasn't the person they thought they knew. Or maybe more accurately, the person they had sort of come to accept.
And that acceptance is so key because it leads us right into our first big area here, which is, I guess you could call it the anatomy of this hidden talent. The entire story really hinges on the family's pre-existing, deeply internalized belief that their son, Mark, was fundamentally not special.
Let's really dig into that idea of being not special, because Lynn and Dave had genuinely, as the book says, become used to the idea that Mark wasn't going to set the world on fire. They saw themselves as ordinary people, and Mark was their ordinary son who faced ordinary disappointments. And they had sort of perfected this way of minimizing his failures.
And that minimization really boiled down to one single phrase that Lynn feels like she used to punctuate every single disappointment in Mark's life.
Never mind.
Never mind. And never mind the bad school reports. Never mind that you failed the football trials. Never mind the job applications that went nowhere or the girlfriends who left. It was just this constant low-level admission of defeat.
It's so sad when you think about it. So when Mark appears on this cover, and not as some background extra, but as the clear star, it's an identity shift of, seismic proportions for them.
Suddenly, they realize he did possess something that genuinely marked him out, made him different to everyone else.
And the reason for this sudden, completely unexpected, and shocking celebrity is, well, it's the core absurdity of the whole story.
Right. So Lynn, she nervously puts the video on, and she realizes almost immediately why Mark was cast. The production itself was, in her words, rubbish, cheap, and vulgar and depressing.
Definitely not Hollywood.
Oh, not even close. And Mark, the mumbler, the boy who looked nothing like Tom Cruise, he was clearly cast for one reason and one reason only.
His physical trait, which Lynn describes in, well, in no uncertain terms. She says it looked like a special effect.
And then she says, it was the biggest one I've ever seen. I mean, can you imagine having that thought about your own son?
No, it's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And this single, undeniable fact that his success is based entirely on this one passive physical attribute, it forces the parents to question their whole belief system about hard work and merit.
Exactly. They suddenly realized that their son, the boy they were constantly comforting with, never mind, had this trait of such incredible magnitude that it just bypassed every traditional path to success they'd ever tried to guide him towards.
He had a talent, but it was purely biological. It wasn't something he'd earned through practice or education.
And they wouldn't have to say never mind about this ever again.
So this is where it gets really, really interesting, right? The deep dive into their own parental blindness. Once the truth is out, the parents immediately start this retrospective interrogation.
It's like their living room becomes a diagnostic ward. Lynn says they felt like they were in an episode of ER.
How could we have missed this? How could they have missed all the obvious physical accommodations Mark had been making for years?
And this is that cognitive dissonance in action. They had concrete evidence, but they just dismissed it all as, quirks. Personality quirks.
So, clue number one goes way back to his school days. Mark absolutely refused to use the communal showers. He made them write a note to the games teacher.
And they just thought he was funny about them, maybe just shy. Dave, the father, even had this brief, incorrect theory that Mark might be gay.
Which is such a fascinating blind spot in itself, because Dave also admits that they found girly magazines under his bed.
Right. So how do you square those two things? It just shows how much they wanted to maintain the specific narrative of just normal teenage awkwardness.
They would rather believe he was awkward, or maybe struggling with his sexuality, than confront the possibility that he just possessed this shocking singular physical difference.
And that discomfort is reflected even more clearly in the second, and I'd say most extensive clue, his wardrobe.
The baggy trousers? He was famous for it. He wore these excessively baggy pants, never jeans. He had this weird collection of slacks and old suits he bought from Oxfam.
Always looking, as Lynn says, so straight. Like he was perpetually dressed for some office job in the 1970s, and they teased him for it. Mercilessly.
And when she has this realization, Lynn just cringes. She realizes his entire wardrobe, all those years of teasing.
Yeah.
It was all a carefully constructed strategic defense.
Mark had invented his look to get himself out of a tight spot. The baggy clothes weren't a choice, they were armor. They were a practical necessity to hide this profound vulnerability.
And then there's the final clue, the underwear, which is almost painfully specific. Mark started insisting on buying his own, and he demanded this very specific style. Boxer briefs.
Which Lynn describes as trunks, with a pouch to put it in.
And Dave, the dad, actually revisited his whole gay theory again, because he thought they looked a bit show-offy.
It's just tragic. Every single quirk, every moment they teased him, was actually just a practical, desperate attempt for him to cope with his reality.
And they mistook physical accommodation for personality. They saw awkwardness where they should have seen, logistical necessity.
Yeah.
So the inevitable confrontation finally happens. It's late that night. Mark comes home, and he sees the video just sitting there, conspicuously, on the kitchen table.
And he knows instantly, they've cottoned on to him.
But he immediately tries to control the narrative, starting with the words they use.
With the semantics, yeah. When Dave calls him a porn star, Mark corrects him right away, very firmly. I'm not a star.
He reserves that title for, the big names, the Jenna Jamesons and Ron Jeremys of the world. He's positioning himself as a talented worker, not a celebrity.
And this leads into what I think is the most critical part of this first section. Mark's detailed economic justification for what he does.
He argues that this physical trait of his is a legitimate talent, it's worthy of professional pursuit, and it's worthy of payment. He says he needed the extra cash, but the core of it was, he says, I haven't got another, talent, have I?
And then he makes this direct and I think very provocative comparison to professional sports. He says he watches guys like David Beckham.
Right.
And he argues they are entitled to make money out of what they're born with. And he challenges his dad directly. He says, what's the difference between having what I've got and being able to play the piano?
And Dave's rebuttal is just
Okay.
It's the classic argument against what you might call passive success. He just snaps back.
He says having a big thing isn't a talent, is it? Playing the piano is hard. It doesn't give people pleasure.
I mean, the subtext of that whole argument, a father debating the pleasure derived from his son's explicit film career, it's so absurd that Lynn, who's listening in, she genuinely struggles not to laugh.
She says the whole scene sounds like a lowbrow comedy routine.
But that humor, it just evaporates so quickly. Dave loses his temper, and he screams that Mark is a freak.
And that's the moment. That's when the whole conversation shifts from this abstract analysis of talent and economics to something profoundly personal and destructive.
That one word, freak, it just ushers us straight into the second part of the story. The emotional fallout and, surprisingly, the unexpected gains.
Because this section is all about how this one absurd secret first destroys and then almost miraculously rebuilds their core relationships.
The argument just escalates instantly after that freak comment. Mark is clearly hurt, and he wants to inflict maximum damage, so he plays the ultimate card. Paternity. He asks, "You know it's what, don't you? Hereditary." And then he points out that he had long suspected that he and Dave didn't share the same problem.
Oof. He's basically confirming that Dave's own endowment is not like his.
And that implication just completely derails the entire fight about Mark's job. All of a sudden, Dave is forced to focus on this 25-year-old skeleton that's been hiding deep in the family closet.
And he just snaps. He throws out a name, Steve Laird. He confronts Lynn right there about that thing with Steve.
This was a man she had been with very briefly 25 years ago, back when she and Dave were living together, but they were, unofficially engaged, still figuring things out.
And Lynn confirms it. She confirms the affair. She tries to downplay it immediately, saying it was not much of an affair, really, only 2 or 3 times.
And critically, she emphasizes the quality. She says the sex wasn't anything much.
But the fact that Mark's shocking physical trait has just unearthed this ghost, it shows how deeply this discovery has rattled the very foundations of their marriage.
And the focus just narrows instantly to a size comparison. It's so uncomfortable. Dave asks Lynn directly if the affair happened because of his own normal size, or if Steve Laird had been, endowed like Mark.
This is the moment of the rawest, most uncomfortable honesty in the whole story, I think.
I agree. And Lynn, in this incredible moment of clarity, she just dismisses the idea. She says there's no way she could possibly forget something like that.
She tells Dave that if Steve Laird had been built like Mark, she would have needed to see a therapist afterwards.
Which confirms Dave's normalcy, and more importantly, it ends that immediate, terrifying paternity scare. Mark is Dave's son. The anomaly doesn't change that.
And what's so extraordinary is what happens next. The sudden, really beautiful reconciliation.
Dave, he realizes he's been acting like a Burke, as he puts it, and he apologizes for his behavior.
And despite the absolute chaos of the evening, the porn career, the paternity questions, raking up old infidelity Lynn mentions, they ended up having sex that night.
And she adds, it wasn't the sort of sex we usually have.
The forced, painful honesty led directly to this unexpected intimacy. They had to tear down all these protective walls of politeness and comfort they'd built up over 25 years.
And in the rubble, they actually found a deeper, more honest connection.
That moment of intimacy really catalyzes Lynn's profound shift in perspective. As she reflects on it later, she realizes that Mark's career, as shocking as it was, it didn't hold the same emotional weight as a true crisis.
Right. It didn't compare to the fear she felt when Mark had pneumonia as a kid, or the devastation when Dave broke his arm in a car crash.
She realizes the discovery was only really frightening for a moment or two, and then she just chose to categorize it differently.
If something has the potential to be funny, which, let's face it, that whole conversation did, she decides she's going to look at it in the right way. It becomes an anecdote, not a tragedy.
And this new perspective drives her on this next little quest, to find the physical origin of Mark's trait, even if it wasn't from Steve Laird.
So she goes to visit her mother and her sister, Helen, and she's trying to find this really delicate way to ask if her deceased father might have shared this physical characteristic.
This detail is so crucial because it just shows her commitment to understanding the truth, no matter how bizarre it is. But the conversation itself is, it's impossibly difficult.
You can't just ask your elderly mother about your late father's private parts. So she tries to ease into it by asking about his health, specifically if he ever smoked.
And that simple question about smoking just triggers this emotional reaction in her mother, who gets tearful and starts lamenting that she didn't give up smoking for him, saying he never asked for much.
And Lynn recognizes immediately that she's dangerously close to pushing her mother into that horrible, dark, deep pit that she fell into after Dad died. So she just drops it. She changes the subject.
But the internal journey has already been a success for her. Lynn realizes that this bizarre discovery about Mark has suddenly made her think about her father in a completely new context.
Not as the sick, elderly man she last saw, but as a young, healthy man who would have been, in her words, using it.
It helped her swap these miserable later memories of her father for happy younger ones.
And the real emotional gain comes on the bus ride home. She recognizes this happy, sad, sweet and sour feeling of being weepy, but for good reasons.
The whole experience, the smut from Karen Glenister, the argument, the confession, the better sex life, all of it had generated this emotional honesty and these new happy memories.
And she reaches this absolutely stunning, counterintuitive conclusion. She thinks all of it was good.
It's an incredible summary. Good sex with her husband, a small victory over the neighborhood gossip, and this deep emotional release thinking about her dad.
She says she could honestly recommend the experience of finding out your son is a porn star to anyone because it forced them all out of their emotional complacency.
And Mark himself, he hasn't quit. He clarifies his commitment to his mother. He tells her, I wasn't doing it because I could get away with it, you know. It doesn't matter that they know now. His professional reasons are still the same.
So Lynn sets a condition for him to stop. She draws a line, but it's based on emotional crisis, not morality. She says, stop when something worse happens.
Like when your gran dies or when your dad and I get divorced. She's anchoring the permanence of this bizarre new status quo to profound family upheaval. Until then, Mark's talent is accepted.
Mark agrees to the deal. They shake hands. And the closing image of the story is just this powerful proof of their successful reintegration.
That night, the three of them went to the Crown for a drink, which is something they used to do when Mark was a teenager but had long stopped doing.
And Lynn was just deeply relieved that the whole film fiasco had somehow moved them back in time rather than forward. The secret, once it was revealed, actually allowed them to return to a simpler, more connected state.
It's a stunning example of how complete absurdity can force profound emotional maturity.
Absolutely. But now, we have to use this shared theme, the social disruption of unshareable truth, to bridge the gap and shift gears entirely. We're going from suburban family melodrama to teenage existential dread.
We're transitioning from a mother's discovery of a hidden physical trait to a teenager's accidental discovery of a profound technological power in the second story, otherwise pandemonium.
So we meet our new narrator. He's a 15-year-old boy who has just moved with his mom from LA to Berkeley. His mom walked out on his dad, who's a scriptwriter.
And the move lands him in the Little Berkeley Big Band, the LBBB, because his mother wants him to be surrounded by artistic people.
And this narrator's whole philosophy is governed by his mother's annoying old song, accentuate the positive.
Otherwise, pandemonium is liable to walk upon the scene.
Right. And he admits he's trying to maintain this positive accentuation by focusing on the one achievable happy ending he can imagine getting laid, rather than dwelling on the Stephen King-type story that his life is about to become.
And his initial goal is purely social. He doesn't fit in with the LBBB kids, and he realizes he needs a VCR so he can tape the NBA playoffs.
Why? Because if you miss the games, you can't talk about them the next day, which, in his words, makes him a dweeb in the eyes of his new peers. Social currency depends on having that shared present knowledge.
So his quest takes him to this specific, dusty old electronics store where he finds a video recorder for $50. It's sold to him by an old hippie guy with a gray beard and a ponytail.
And this hippie guy gives him this crucial, very strange warning. He just says, just forget it.
The hippie is just lamenting the machine's existence. He's wrestling with it. He says, because it can't know anything, right? It's just a fucking VCR. What can it know? Nothing.
And the boy agrees. But the hippie's immediate relief sort of suggests that the VCR does know something, and it sets the stage for the machine's profound secret.
So the boy takes the VCR home. He wires it all up, runs a successful test by taping a news show, and then he sets the timer for the Lakers game that night.
But the crucial accidental error happens because he gets distracted by, well, teenage hormones.
Of course.
His mother calls and announces he's getting a ride home from rehearsal with Martha and her dad. And Martha's described as the hot but not slutty girl in the band.
So in his excitement over Martha, he completely messes up the recording process.
He'd been watching The Matrix on the VCR earlier. He remembered to take that tape out, but in his haste, his excitement over Martha, he forgot to put a blank tape back in.
And that one tiny error leads to this shocking accidental realization. He gets home, he presses fast forward, thinking he's just checking the tape.
And he starts zipping through Letterman, which hadn't even finished yet when he left. He presses eject. There's no cassette, but the TV just keeps racing through the ads, through the Late Late Show, and then into the next morning's breakfast news.
He quickly realizes what's happening. He's skipping through live network television into the future.
He sees tomorrow's weather forecast, the morning traffic report, and the best plays from what the broadcasters are calling last night's Lakers game, even though, for him, that game hasn't even been played yet.
This accidental knowledge immediately sets up this profound dilemma about the futility of foresight. The boy's initial thought is, this is the greatest thing ever.
Of course. I can see the entire NBA Finals, future episodes of my favorite shows. Maybe I can even avert disaster.
But he learns very quickly that this knowledge is profoundly useless in the social ecosystem of a 15-year-old. He tries to use it for, small gains, winning a small bet, but the knowledge itself just acts like a poison.
He has this realization that the entire core of school life, the whole social structure for teenagers, is built on anticipation. Everyone is always waiting for something to happen. The big game, the party, the final exam, the next episode of a show. And knowing the truth, he says, squashes it all flat.
He even runs through this necessary imaginary conversation with his peers, which Hornby uses just brilliantly to dissect the social contract of being a teenager.
Right. If he claims to know tomorrow's news or last week's scores before they've happened for everyone else, the peer response is immediate and absolute.
It's you're a jerk, you need to have your ass kicked.
The knowledge is so disruptive that the only way he can participate is to just agree with whatever prediction is closest to what he knows to be the truth.
Which means his incredible secret knowledge is, in his words, no fucking good to anyone for building any kind of social currency.
This is such a major insight, and it really expands on that theme from Not a Star. Just like Mark's talent was inherently unshareable because of social taboos.
The VCR's truth is unshareable because it violates the social contract of shared time and shared anticipation. He concludes that nobody wants the jerk who comes in and tells them the ending before it happens.
So he just keeps watching. He becomes a prisoner of the remote control. Fast-forwarding through about a month of future programming.
He sees the Lakers win the NBA Finals. He sees the A's get destroyed by the Yankees. He sees the one where Phoebe and Joey get married.
All the minor, predictable cultural events that define their shared timeline, he watches until even his dreams are just reruns playing out on a 14-inch screen.
And then the tone changes dramatically. This is the moment when the frivolous predictive power turns into genuine paralyzing dread.
And this brings us to the final section, the time of the static.
He had noticed a subtle change in the programming. The news programs were getting really fucking long. It was starting to take a lot more fast forwarding to get past all the serious segments.
But around 5 or 6 weeks into the future, the change becomes absolute.
He picks up the remote, and there is no escape. Every single network channel, ABC, CBS, NBC, it becomes just like one long fucking news show.
The sitcoms, the sports, the light entertainment, it's all gone.
And the news is relentless. It's focused on these mounting global crises. Hornby gives us very specific details here to build the dread.
Yeah, he lists India and Pakistan, Russia, China, Iraq and Iran, Israel and Palestine. The images are these fuzzy, unstable feeds of people packing up their possessions and trying to get out of these conflict zones.
He says it feels like the immediate days after 9/11, but this time, the return to normal just never arrives.
He watches, completely hypnotized, until he hits the pivotal, clarifying moment, the president's speech.
He sees a female president sitting in the Oval Office, giving this gravely serious address about these being the darkest days in our history, urging courage and resolve.
And this confirms it. The crises have all merged into a single, imminent, global catastrophe.
Immediately after her speech, the network cuts to these live, non-fuzzy pictures that just seal the fate of the nation.
You see people walking down the steps of a New York City subway station, carrying bundles of possessions, carrying small children, trying to get underground.
This isn't just an international conflict anymore. This is the immediate breakdown of civil society right at home.
And then the ultimate finality. After maybe another hour or two of news coverage, the screen goes silent. It's just replaced by static.
He estimates this happens about 6 weeks from his present day. He tries desperately to fast forward beyond the static through the future, but he can't get there. Network TV is canceled forever.
And the sheer terror of this knowledge is just amplified by the fact that he hasn't told a single soul. He recognizes the social absurdity of it all.
He concludes that in movies and books, characters don't talk about spooky stuff because it just sounds dumb. Telling a friend he could skip through time on his VCR would get him a pounding faster than anything else.
And he rationalizes his silence toward his mother by saying people should be allowed to enjoy their lives.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to drop that catastrophic bomb on her.
He doesn't want to say, don't stress out, Mom, because in a month or so, someone's going to drop the big one. He chooses to protect her sense of normalcy, even if he knows it's a lie.
The only person he seeks out is the hippie guy who sold him the machine. He goes back to the store, and the hippie recognizes the panic on his face immediately.
He confirms their shared knowledge of the temporal anomaly, of the impending end.
And the hippie's first lament is just devastatingly human. It cuts through all the global dread and focuses on something so deeply personal. He just says, oh man, I never even started my novel.
That small, sudden finality of a single human aspiration, the unwritten novel, it reinforces the reality of the situation far more chillingly than any news report could.
The hippie even asks if the boy thinks network TV would stop for some other benign reason, like to encourage us to get more exercise.
And the boy realizes how hopeless it is. The conclusion is simple. No, we're fucked, man.
And this is where the 15-year-old specific brand of positive accentuation finally kicks in. He realizes, I haven't done anything yet.
Faced with a 6-week timeline, all those lifetime goals, film school, driving across the U.S., having a kid, they're all impossible.
But one thing is achievable.
Sex. He decides he's going to ask out Martha.
It's the ultimate priority shift. The knowledge of the impending end actually frees him from all the neuroses of normal teenage dating. He becomes a lot less nervous about the whole dating thing.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? The world ends. It's going to anyway.
Exactly. So when they finally go on their first date, Martha tells him one of the reasons she likes him is that he seems sad.
She notes that most guys their age are always just laughing about nothing. And the boy recognizes he's adopted this mask of the tortured genius, even though his sadness isn't poetic or sensitive at all. It's purely catastrophic.
Right. He realizes he's getting all this credit for being a tortured genius-style dude, when really he's just terrified. He feels like an amateur compared to Martha, who admits she doesn't even know why she's sad half the time. She just is.
So their shared but very differently sourced melancholy is what initially bonds them.
But eventually, he gets sick of carrying the burden alone, and he shares the secret with her. He calls her over for lunch and takes her up to his room to show her the VCR.
He shows her the evidence. He'd rewound it to the beginning of the news takeover and fast forwards until they reach those clear, chilling scenes of the New York City subway.
And Martha watches the footage, and she starts to cry. They share this sad, quiet conversation about what they'll miss and what they'll never get to do.
It's the first genuinely honest, non-socially policed conversation either of them has probably ever had.
And the final act of connection is driven by Martha. She seizes control of their limited future. She suggests they start having sex immediately.
Not just because they want to, but because she wants them to get good at it. They are prioritizing the essential human experience of connection and skill acquisition in the face of absolute oblivion.
And critically, they decide not to use contraception. They realize they can't catch any disease from each other that would matter.
And if she gets pregnant, well, that's fine by us.
They choose the ultimate act of optimism, creating life at the very end of the world, for what the narrator calls obvious reasons.
They prioritize a future child, even if that child only lives for 6 weeks, over protecting themselves from a future that they know isn't going to exist. They've chosen connection and life experience as their final, meaningful acts before the static hits.
Yeah. What an incredible contrast, but also a synthesis of themes. We've gone from the absurdity of a suburban family healing itself through the discovery of a physical anomaly,
to a teenager forging this ultimate, sincere relationship through the foresight of the apocalypse.
both not a star and otherwise pandemonium. For all their differences, they both revolve around this sudden, bizarre infusion of unexpected, highly disruptive truth. Mark gains this unrivaled physical value.
And the boy gains this unparalleled temporal knowledge.
And the knowledge in both cases is at first completely unshareable. Mark's size is hidden by baggy clothes for years. The boy's foresight can't be told to his peers without him getting ridiculed.
It violates the core social contracts, one of appearance and one of shared time.
And yet, paradoxically, the revelation of these highly guarded secrets leads to these profound, positive emotional shifts. In Not a Star, the truth forces Lynn and Dave to confront their past, which leads to better intimacy and a return to a genuine familial connection. It moves them back in time emotionally.
And in Otherwise Pandemonium, the secret of the impending static forces the teenager to stop worrying about all the trivial metrics of social currency. NBA scores, anticipation, being a tortured genius.
It forces him to prioritize the one truly meaningful, achievable human goal: genuine connection and, in a way, life creation with Martha.
So the common thread woven all through Hornby's narrative is that the comfort of normalcy is often a kind of lie, hiding deeper unresolved issues or maybe unexplored opportunities.
And the truly defining moments of life, the moments of real, meaningful growth and intimacy, they arise when that comfortable lie is shattered by an absurd, high-stakes, or heavily guarded truth.
So what does this all mean for you? If the most intense, life-changing moments in these stories come from completely unforeseen, absurd, or highly guarded secrets, we have to ask,
What important defining knowledge about your own life, your talents, or your relationships might you be intentionally overlooking or actively hiding right now? And maybe more importantly, what emotional or experiential price are you paying for maintaining that silence or that comfortable blindness?